One man who was in the news all weekend and has done no other media, but we love him very much. Tom Tugendhat, the former security minister, says that nothing should be ruled out on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Peter Mandelson. Obviously, there are ongoing inquiries. We have to be careful. He used the word treason. Tom Tugendhat, I'm very honoured. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Great, thank you. This sort of blew up over the weekend, and I'm sure you took cover. Explain in your words, because treason, you were the security minister, I see that. I thought to myself when this happened, if you are found guilty of passing what really are state secrets or insider trading, as Richard Tice said, is that not a treasonable offence?
Well, this is my point, right? So there are various different crimes that are being alleged here, and let's remember they've only been alleged. There's absolutely nothing proven here, but there's various different crimes that have been alleged, and some of them include things like insider trading or passing government secrets or whatever. But there's a fundamental problem here, isn't there? And that's the problem of betrayal. You know, if you betray your country, if you betray the British people, then that in itself is an offence as well. And it's an offence because we all know that what it means that we can't trust each other. It undermines trust in our government, in our system, in our royal family, in our diplomats, in our soldiers, in whatever it happens to be. And so it's a really serious offence. And that's why I didn't actually accuse these two of it. I just said we need to look again at our treason laws, because it is possible that that might have come into effect. Now, it won't, for the very simple reason that our treason laws are about 700 years old, they're 1350, something like that. And so they're not really fit for this day and age, and they would need massive updating. But I'm just asking the question, what does betrayal mean? Because we saw that, we saw that leader of reform in Wales. He got 10 years for being a parrot for the Russians. Why didn't we use treason laws there? Why didn't we update them after that? There's a real question here about betrayal in our country, and what does it mean?
And it's interesting. There's no, again, you make the point, it's a very salient point, that these are ongoing investigations. It's difficult to go into too much detail. But whether it's Andrew allegedly passing information, I mean, I read some of the stuff that Epstein could have spent money and invested money in certain areas that he knew were of interest. Mandelson, who I found out at the weekend, I mean, listen, I'm allowed to say dodgy. He was the one who stuck his neck on the line to get Andrew the trade envoy's job, when even Prince Charles at that point was saying this is going to end in tears. I think the British public, Tom, more than specifically, just as a general view, are starting to say things like, how much do these people, or whoever these people are, politicians, members of the royal family, how much of this is an old boys club? How much is covered up? How much dirt and suffering do we not know about? And that's what I keep saying about the royal family. I don't blame King Charles necessarily, but I don't think the British people's patience is as strong as it was in all of this.
Well, Jeremy, that's really my point. I mean, trust matters. The fact that I'm going to reveal a secret. The fact that you and I know each other, Jeremy, means that when you ask me to do this, I trust you to stick to the times that we agreed, because I've got something later on. I trust that we're going to behave properly to each other. I trust that we're going to, be able to answer and question things in a proper way. If we don't trust each other, it's really hard to make life work. Now, that's even harder for a country. It just is, right? I mean, the person who sends you the bill, or the person who sends you the letter or whatever, you don't know them. They're a bureaucratic name. They're a faceless, bureaucrats, to use a terrible phrase. But you need to be able to trust the system. And that's why trust matters. That's why treason, I'm afraid, matters, because it's about trust. And all I can say is, whether or not Andrew Mountbatten Windsor or Peter Mandelson is responsible or not responsible for these alleged crimes, I don't know. But we need to be able to trust the police to investigate without fear or favour. But we also need to trust the institutions that they were part of, the royal family, the military, the Foreign Office, the Department for International Trade, and so on, to call out any such events in the future were they to occur. And who didn't call them out? If these crimes are real, who saw them and didn't say? Now, I don't mean the junior person who opened the car door and let, some underage girl into Buckingham Palace, if indeed that happened. But where was the private secretary who's paid for by the British taxpayer? Where was the RAF, guard at the RAF base who's paid for by the British taxpayer? These are questions that need answering, and that's where I think we need to rebuild trust.
I think you're right. Fairness and trust are the things that a lot of people in this country are now saying, how are how can this carry on? As a sitting MP, I'm quite interested. Do you get a sense, just yourself, not just yourself, but in the House, do MPs feel betrayed by Andrew and his alleged doings and misdoings with Epstein? How do you feel about it personally?
I mean, I'd say let down rather than betrayed, but I think he has very well, allegedly, forgive me, he has allegedly very, very badly let down the country, his brother, indeed his mother, and the organisations like the Royal Navy that he claimed to be so devoted to. So, it raises real questions. Now, if it's a betrayal, I'm afraid I'm really cautious about the word for the very simple reason that I'm waiting for the court case, obviously, which may or may not come, of course. I mean, I don't know whether that's going to come either. But I just don't want to prejudice anything. I don't want to damage any case that may or may not come. So completely. But I think it's definitely a very, very serious loss of confidence, loss of trust, and you can go further from that if you choose.
Just a couple of things. This is an astonishing story that rose over the weekend. Cabinet Office staff allegedly destroyed a copy of a bullying investigation to the head, Starmer's new head of the civil service, after breaking into a safe. The safe was forced open by the department's propriety and ethics team in 2022. One of the documents reportedly in the safe, a confidential report into bullying against Dame Antonia Romeo, was later destroyed, for Christ's sake. I don't mean, what is happening in this country, Tom Tugendhat? Seriously.
Well, this is my point. Look, I don't believe Britain is broken for the very simple reason that I see huge amounts of energy and confidence and innovation in young people, in businesses, in tech startups, and you name it, in farms, and I see people doing the most extraordinary things. So I don't believe for a second that Britain is broken. I do begin to think that the state is just not working, and we need a complete reset of the state. Now, that's one of the things that I'm really pleased that Kemi's working on. She's looking at various areas on, but we need to completely reset, not just the way in which, we decide whether the tax goes up by 1 or 2% or down by 1 or 2%. That's the obvious bit. It's how does the government work? How does the civil service work? How does the ministers govern? And how are they accountable to the British people? Because there's a real feeling, and I know I'm not alone in this, and I know many of your listeners will share it, that the state itself is broken.
No,
that's not the same as the country.
But I mean, if you I get that. But if you are an ordinary Joe getting up this morning, hard-working Brits, alarm clock Brits going to work, and you read that the Cabinet Office broke into a safe, somebody there, and destroyed a document, you question almost everything. This is my whole point. People are beginning to question the royal family. They're beginning to question the apparatus. What happened there? Of government. They're past questioning the judgment of this Prime Minister, who's done it again, hasn't he? It's not going to leave her. She's going to be attacked every day as a bully. I don't understand. But I do think there's a wider concern. Whether you think Britain is broken or not, people, Tom, are starting to question the very basics, I think. Why does everything to people, I think, is, you use two words, there's a lack of belief that we're fair anymore, and there's a lack of trust in many, many institutions. That's a dangerous moment.
It is a dangerous moment. And just to be clear, the report, if you read it, said that they lost the codes of the safe. And by the way, that's not desperately unusual. There are hundreds and hundreds of safes in Whitehall, and every now and again, somebody who had the code leaves the civil service, and you need to force the safe open. That's not particularly unusual. The fact that the document may or may not have been destroyed, I mean, frankly, almost everything's recorded electronically, so I don't believe it's disappeared anyway. The paper copy may have been destroyed just for convenience, but I don't believe that real copies, if you see what I mean, have gone anywhere. So, but look, all of that's a detail. The fundamental point is, what the hell is this government doing? What the hell are others doing to restore trust in our country? Because the reality is, if we want to grow as a country, if we want people to invest here, if we want our people to stay, and we don't want to see young people going to, Dubai or Portugal or America or wherever it is that they're going, we need people to have confidence in the future. And that means trusting our institutions. That means trusting in their own future. And that's why it's so important that we restore trust in our institutions. That's why I want to make sure that we're a bit more open, a bit more clear about what it is that matters.
Final question. Thank you so much this morning. I know how busy you are. Nigel Farage, some would criticise him for having gone to the Chagos Islands at the weekend. Others say it's highlighting another disastrous decision by this government. Should the government have blocked Nigel Farage from going to the Chagos Islands when they don't seem to block hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants who can come to this country and get almost anything willy-nilly?
Look, I think Nigel is one of the best PR merchants out there, and he's absolutely brilliant at getting publicity. But the idea that you can walk into a military base without permission, I'm afraid, is just complete rubbish. And he's been teased mercilessly on Twitter, as you've seen. You know, he hasn't been allowed into Tracy Island or into the Bond villain lair. He hasn't been allowed into the nuclear submarine cage either. You know, look, he's making good show out of something, and Nigel's really good at that. So I'm not going to be criticising him for it. But the reality is, this is a terrible deal, and let's get down to the absolute facts of it. This is a terrible deal for the United Kingdom. It's a terrible deal for our future. I wish we didn't have to have the US president calling it out, because frankly, we should be calling it out on our own. We don't need foreigners, you know, even if we like the foreigner, we don't need foreigners telling us how to govern ourselves. We can do it ourselves, but we need to have a government that actually believes in us. And frankly, this government just doesn't believe in us. They believe in some sort of, you know, arbitrary idea of international law that doesn't really exist. They believe in some sort of, you know, sacrificial lamb type attitudes to guilt and to hair-shirted colonialism or whatever. I don't know what they believe, frankly. They don't seem to believe in anything, but frankly, we should be standing up for Britain. And the idea that we should be handing over a vital Indian Ocean strategic base is ridiculous.
Mate, it's always great to have you on. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. Have a great week. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Tugendhat, former Security Minister, live and exclusive on Talk Breakfast. Just gone